All right, so for this activity, we're gonna go ahead and practice creating 3 different washes. So a wash is basically when you combine water with the colored pigment in your watercolor set, okay? I want you guys to get into the habit of creating washes rather than pulling color directly from the watercolor set and onto your paper. Watercolor, just by its very name, has water in it. So if you're just pulling pigment from the container and putting it on your paper, you're forgetting about the water part, okay? Now, for this activity, we're creating 3 different washes. So starting with water as our base, mixing small amounts of paint into each of the washes. The goal is to create 3 completely different washes, 1 light, 1 medium, and 1 dark. Okay, now I want to share with you a little bit about this palette. I'm going to start to put these on our table. So this is a shallow palette, and what I want you guys to do, if you can, rather than mixing your washes directly on the lids, okay, of your watercolor set, get in the habit of pulling colors out onto your palette, okay? Some of these lids for your sets are actually, they've seen better days. I don't even know if we can get some of the paint that's on there off, like for example this. So using this separate palette is a good idea, okay? So the first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna grab a paintbrush. I'm gonna dip it in my water cup here, all right? And I'm going to, I think I'm gonna use 3 small areas because I don't want this to take a whole lot of time. So I'm just gonna put about the same amount of water in each of these 3 craters. Okay, so I'm just dipping my brush back and forth. And I'm just trying to eyeball, okay, about the same amount of water in each. So to create 3 different washes, all right? Now for this, you can do this with any color, okay? So I think for this, I am going to choose, what do I want to choose? I think I'm gonna choose this purple here just because I have a lot of it in my crater. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I am going to, before I get started, I'm gonna grab my paintbrush, tap it off onto my water cup, and I'm going to do what's called activate my color. Okay, so I'm just gonna tickle it in this crater, all right, and I'm gonna rinse it off. So right now, this crater is activated. It's not flooded with water, which caused kind of disaster within your watercolor set. It just, it now has a little bit of wetness to it where I can start to pull it to apply it to my washes, okay? So I'm gonna grab my brush, okay? I tapped it off on my water cup. I'm gonna tickle it in here and just pick up a little bit, and I'm going to add it to my first crater. Okay, so I'm gonna mix this in here, mix until it's completely thoroughly purple and water, or whatever color you want to use, and water mixed together. Okay, from there I'm going to really quickly, I'm gonna apply it. Okay, I'm gonna hold my paintbrush by the grippy. And this right now is going to be my first wash of purple. So it's kind of a lavendery color. Okay, so I'm just going back and forth. Like so. Okay, so that's wash number 1. So that's pretty light. Okay, now for the second one, I want to make it a little bit darker. Okay, so I'm going to rinse my paintbrush. I'm going to blot it. I'm going to tickle this in the crater. Okay, and I am going to mix this just a little bit more the second time in here. Okay. Now before I apply it, I'm just going to test blob it. Okay. This to me seems a little bit dark. I was not paying attention when I went here to grab the pigment. So I'm going to add a little bit more water to it. So if you mess it up like I did, you can add more water. Anytime you add more water, it lightens it up. Okay, so I want this to be a middle one. I could actually apply that in the end if I wanted to. I just want to show you how to fix stuff if you make a mistake. All right, let's see what we got here. Okay, this is a lot better. See how with that extra water it lightened up, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and, for this second one, I am going to use my paintbrush and I'll apply it here. Okay, now just a really quick reminder, when two things are side by side and they're wet at the same time, they will combine. Okay, so I'm trying to keep a little strip of white there. Okay, so you can see how this one is a little bit darker. For my last wash, I'm going to make that pretty dark. Okay, so I have my brushes wet. I tapped off excess water, okay, on my paper towel. I'm gonna go in here, tickle it in here, and then add it to the last crater. Okay, gonna mix it thoroughly and then test blob it right here. Okay, so this actually looks pretty dark. I'm gonna make it a smidge darker just because it's my last one. Okay, so I'm gonna rinse, blot, tickle, apply, mix, mix, mix. Okay, like so. Good. All right. So this one reads as darker. Okay, and then I'm going to apply it. Now, one thing I want to just mention real quick is that if you see how I'm going over some areas of this wash to be a little bit darker, okay, to make it darker, you can really only go over watercolor paper, I would say about 2.5 times before you add too much water to the paper and the paper starts to pull apart. So if you find you're going over an area and you get these like little chunks in your piece, that's what that's from. So right now I have 3 different washes that I've created using my pigment of my watercolor set, water within my extra palette. Okay, so just get in the habit of mixing your washes using the extra palette. And these we will eventually apply to our practice structure and then our final. Okay, so if you think about it, when you create a structure in 1 or 2 point perspective, you have that illusion of depth, right? We want our color that we add to our piece, to our artwork, to mirror that depth as well through lights, mediums, and darks, okay? Adding that shading where applicable, okay? So just give this a practice and see what you can come up with.